Hey everybody, it's Greg here again. So this time I got a Kenmore dryer. There wasn't really any complaints with it, but I just wanted to see how it ran, if it heated, things like that. As soon as I started up, I heard a bunch of banging from inside, and I have a bunch of clips here. I thought they were actually staples, but I don't know what the heck they are, really, and a dime. And that all shot out the back. So I'm going to take this whole thing apart because I imagine there's going to be a bunch of crap inside of here that we don't want to be in here. So let's get on that. Okay, so first things first, when we're starting off, we want to unplug it from the wall. And with Samsung, they just have 2 screws on the back of the front or top panel. So we can undo those. And the top panel will just slide back once we get these off. I don't know if this thing's ever been apart before. Everything seems pretty tight. I'll find out when we get in there. Usually people put screws back in the wrong spots and things like that, so you can tell. So just slide back. Sometimes it can be a bit of a pain, especially if the top is warped a little bit. It can be a bit of a pain to get it off there. Now, with this front panel, we have to take this off in order to get out the drum and to get off the front console and stuff. So there's these little tabs that need to be kind of pried out of there. Once you get to this point, sometimes it will come back, sometimes it won't. Depends whether this has been off before. I'll show you what I'm talking about. There's these one little hole, I guess, in this guy, but this piece right here sits in that hole. And sometimes it catches and doesn't want to release. So you got to take a little pick down there or something and release that piece in order to get that off. So we undid that wiring. I'm just going to use my drill because it's a lot faster for me. So there's a couple screws up top here, and then one that holds the board to this front console. I usually take those off first, but there's 3 or 4 screws in the front of this panel that we have to take off in order to get that front panel off. Okay, so if you open the door, there'll be 2 screws right there and there. They'll be the ones with the washers on them. So we're going to take those off. Watch at this point. If these little tabs have been pushed down before, the door and this whole thing might just fall forward on you. So just watch for that. Now you're going to push down on these little tabs. They're little metal tabs that stop the panel from falling forward. Most of the time you can just kind of lift up a little bit and pull back. Sometimes you do have to push these tabs in just a little bit. So you got to undo the door switch and then just lift up on this panel, and this whole front panel comes right off. So I'm going through it a little quick. If you need a slower version of this, I do have a bunch of Samsung taking apart videos. Just maybe look for one of those, and it'll show it a little bit more slower anyway. So on the back of this, there's a bunch of these little holders that hold the wiring in place. So you just have to twist them to get it off there. This one only has 1. Some of them have 3 on the back of that panel. You'll also see those same things right here. We'll just twist these and get this wiring out of here. I also need to disconnect that light because this whole panel is going to come off. Wow, that really was tight on there. So we'll just move the wiring out of the way here. Now there's 4 screws plus 1 more down on the blower housing. These 4 screws will come off. It's really not tough to replace. rip these apart. Once you've done it a couple times, it's very easy. So yeah, one more screw on this heater housing that holds the heater housing to the blower wheel housing. And I can already see something. This is the end of the idler, the actual pulley end of the idler. So that's not good at all. When you start seeing stuff that should be holding the belt on inside of there, sitting out here somewhere, that's definitely not good. So to take this bulkhead piece off, I'm just going to lift up and release it out of the little tabs that it sits on, and I can pull that back. So there is 2 rollers on the front here. We'll take a look at those. We'll probably clean those up before we put all this back together. There's a nickel in there. I imagine there's going to be a lot more stuff in there. So taking off the belt, I do have a video of how to release this belt, but I'm just going to take it off right now, and you guys can watch from out here. You're just basically moving the idler out of the way, pulling back the tension so you can get the belt off the motor. So we'll pull that back. I imagine with that pulley not even being on there, there's probably not going to be a heck of a lot of tension. I was surprised that the drum was still turning. It's I don't know. I don't know how it was doing that, but the motor is still driving it, I guess. So the drum comes right out like that. So we'll move this out of the way. Now we can actually take a look and see what is going on in here. And actually it doesn't look too bad. Rear rollers, looks like I can just clean up the shafts. This one's a little bit sticky, but should be able to clean that guy up. Heater's kind of sitting in there weird. There's a bunch of lint inside of there. So all in all, it looks like all we're going to need is a new idler, which is very common for these Samsung style Kenmore or just the Samsung. Rear rollers cleaned up, it all vacuumed out. Front rollers cleaned up, and that is probably it. I have to take a look at that belt just to make sure it didn't get any burning on it. But yeah, other than that, that's not too bad. I wanted to just show you how to place this idler quick here. This is a very common thing. So there's one screw holding it on. They can be really tight, but this guy wasn't too bad. We'll just reuse that spring because the spring does not come with the new idler. The idler itself has changed, so make sure that the screw that comes with your idler, you'll see, I don't know if you can see that or not, but the shoulder that's on there is a lot different. The newer one is the smaller shoulder. They designed it a little bit differently now because they were having issues. So just put that on, and we can throw that screw in there. Everything's got to kind of line up right, but it's not too hard. The little arm that comes off the idler has to go under this switch here that's connected to the back of the motor, because if the belt breaks, it will shut off the motor. So that's how that works. So we'll just do this guy back up. And that's all for that. Now I guess we'll tackle these rollers. I got the rear rollers here. They sound all right, but they're just not spinning as fast as they should be. And that's because when they come from the factory, the these little bearings that are on here are impregnated with oil, is what they called it. So basically it has some oil on it. That oil attracts all the dust. The dust builds up underneath that roller and causes issues. So basically you got to take this little triangle clip. That can be a pain in the butt, and sometimes they do break because they are just plastic, but you got to get that off there. And then I usually just take a piece of paper towel and clean up the shaft a little bit. If it looks like the shaft has high marks and low marks, you'll see it'll be different colors. So right up here is kind of blackish, and right here looks like it's been polished really silvery. So what I do with that is just take a piece of emery cloth and just polish it up a little bit. Get some of that, the higher edges ran down. You don't want to do it too much. You just want to knock off an edge. So get all the dust that we just made through there off, and throw this roller back on, and look at how nice that is now. So a lot of the time that's all you need to do with these rear rollers, any in the front rollers. If any of them are going to be shot, usually it's this one. I don't know why this one takes such a beating over the other ones, but must just be the way it's loaded up, I guess, when the clothes come around in the drum. So I'll take this little guy off here. If you are using a pick, be careful. I've stabbed myself I don't know how many times in the hand with a pick, and it doesn't feel great. Also watch the whole thing, front panel, the heating housing, everything in this thing is like a giant razor blade. So watch when you're taking off panels and stuff like that, because they will cut you. So I'm just going to clean up this one a little bit. Just rough it up a little bit. And you'll see if you do that, you got to put the roller back on and it still doesn't roll very well. Kind of like that. If you move it up and down, side to side, and you're getting a lot of movement just between the roller bearing and the shaft, then there's issues with this thing. This one, we can clean up that shaft a little more. The piece of sandpaper that I'm using here is a little worn down, so I'm just going to grab another piece, and if I can find it, I keep moving it around on myself. There's another little piece. So this has got a little bit more roughness to it, I guess. It's a newer piece, so it might have just done nothing with that old piece because it felt a little bit like rubbing it with paper. What you can also do is the inside of the roller, you can put your paper towel or whatever you have, just kind of jam it into that hole, pull it up the other side a little bit, and just run that roller on there. Get some of that stuff that's inside of there out of there. Sometimes you have to use a little sandpaper inside of there too, but I think we should be all right. See, that's amazing. So we got all vacuumed out, changed the idler, change those two rollers. We can put the drum back in and take care of those front rollers. Okay, so put the drum back in, put that belt back on. I checked out the belt, and it's good. Those belts are very tough. It's not very often that you need to change a belt. Check out this front felt when you put it back on. Not necessarily the lint, like this can all be just vacuumed off, but sometimes little rocks or bits of metal or something like that can get stuck in this thing. And then when you put it all back together, you still end up with a grinding type of sound, and it doesn't make sense where it's coming from. So yeah, just make sure that it doesn't have any excess buildup of anything on there. So these front rollers we're going to do the same thing with. There's a bunch of fuzz in them. Hair and stuff gets in behind these rollers, and we'll plug it up too. And that's usually what causes them to actually burn right off, just from the heat that's generated from the hair that's in behind it. So just clip this guy a little bit. We'll wipe out the inside of that roller. I do this just about every machine that I ever take apart, whether I'm in there for a heater or what have you. I still do this just because I know it's going to be needed, and usually they don't last too long, so you don't even have to sand that guy down. It's running nice and smooth. Now I get this one. There's not much to servicing any type of Samsung dryer that I've had anyway. Maybe there's some new ones out there that I haven't even seen yet, but yeah, these guys are very, very easy. So that's what I was talking about with all that hair and stuff that's in behind there. That is gonna cause issues, and we're catching it early, so it can't become an issue. We'll just clean that up really good. Sure to get all that hair and fuzz out of there. We're gonna have to, I think, clean out this vent too. It's got a bunch of stuff in there. So I'll show you how to take that off here in a minute. So get all that stuff off there. Let's see how this. It's pretty good. Okay. Nice. So I'll take this filter out and spin this around. What we're going to do, I think it's a little easier, is hook this back on up here so it's held there. Spin the drum while pushing in on the bottom. That will let the rollers all underneath the drum where they need to be sitting. Then you can lift these guys back up into their position. So with that in place now, we can take off this piece here, and that's where all the lint and everything is jammed up. So there's, depending on which style, there's 2 or 3 screws holding this on. Usually there's just 2, one on each side. And then you can just pull that down. So yeah, I don't know if you can see that or not, but that giant block that's in there should not be in there. Oh, and there's a big 2.5-inch screw stuck in there. That's not good. So how I go about cleaning these usually is I just use a flat blade screwdriver and kind of push all the lint out down to the bottom. Once it gets out there, I just take the vacuum and clean it out of here. But there'll be little tracks where the lint filter actually slides into. That's where things get really bunged up in there. So make sure you clean out those. You can always just empty this into a garbage too. It's probably just as easy. Since I have the vacuum right here, I'm just going to use it, and it needs to be just about emptied anyway. So we'll get that sucked out, and I'll show you what it's supposed to look like. So that's what it should look like inside there. So your lint filter can actually go sit down properly. If your lint filter doesn't go in all the way, this is what's going to be plugged. So at least you know how to get to this piece to take it off and clean it out and get that lint filter sitting where it should be. And that is a big issue, because if it's not sitting where it should be, that means things can get past the filter and get down into areas where nothing but hot air and maybe a little lint should be. So it can cause big problems in these machines. Well, any dryer really. So we'll hook that back up. Make sure you hook up the wiring down here. It's not going to work too well if you don't. It's actually fairly clean. You might have to vacuum it out again, but see how it now sits down. I don't know if you noticed before or not, but it did not actually sit down all the way. Little things like this drive me nuts, so I'm just going to scrape some of this off of here. All right. So now we can put in these five, I guess, including the one that sits down here, back on, and then we can throw that metal part of the console back on. Get that part back on. We can put the wiring back into its little holders here. Sometimes these things get kind of ratched a little and they don't grab on the best, but do what you can. It holds the wiring from coming in contact with the dryer drum, so it's fairly important to at least get it in the holders. Okay, so I got this guy. So there's only one little holder on the back here that holds that console wire on, and we put this on. I usually just get one side in instead of trying to do both sides at the same time. It's kind of a pain in the butt, really. So don't forget the screw here that holds the board to the console. Make sure that this is pushed down far enough for this hole to line up. There's a little tab right here that has to sit in there too, so make sure you get that in place. Now, getting the other side on can be a bit of a pain, but that's all right. So it just needs to be pushed over into place. Usually I try to get the top one because it seems to be a little easier to get. Then you have to make sure that this little piece coming off this front bulkhead comes through right here. And it's such a pain to do that sometimes, but that's where that has to sit. If you don't get that into that slot, this won't sit right. And you could end up breaking something. So I just need some more screws. So we got that down there in place. Okay, this is looking great. Now we need that front panel, and we're just about done, guys. Like, this is how quick this actual job is. I like to give this a little bit of a wipe out too, because it tends to collect a lot of sand and stuff in there. So I'm just hook it onto the little tabs that come up from the base. Connect this door switch and push it in. These little tabs will hold it. In most cases, if yours doesn't, don't let it go. Hold it with your leg or something. Doesn't matter which screws you do first or last or anything like that. There's just those 4 that run across the top here. And then we got the 2 that are inside the door. Oh. And we might need that screw. So the 2 with the big washers on them are the ones that go in here. And if you are using a drill, make sure you have the setting turned down because you don't want to strip all these screws that are going in. You want everything to be tight as it goes together. Okay, you got the console. So you just put these little tabs into the holes and then stand it up. Make sure you hook up your wiring. And then usually it just kind of pushes back and falls into place like that. It's not always that easy. That went actually pretty nice, but it's not anything tough. So put the lid back on. Slide that forward so those tabs actually interlock with the slots in the top. For these, I don't usually use a drill. I usually use this little ratcheting wrench I have. This thing is so handy. So you might have to push down or push over. Depends how things are lining up. This one's actually lining up really well, which is good. The more everything lines up, the more square your whole machine is. And since it's just tin kind of panels, it can be out of square usually. And that can also affect sounds and stuff. If the drum is rubbing on the side panel or the top panel, like if you stand on top of your dryer to do something above it, to hook up the venting or something, this top panel gets pushed in. The drum, when it turns, will rub on that panel. So you got to take that panel off, push it out as much as you can, put it back on, and you should be fine. So let's get this guy back up here. These cords are a pain in the butt. It's fairly thick wiring, so it's tough to bend. All right, let's see how we did. So I usually just put it on time dry. Time dry won't shut off on me because it's not censored. So it'll run on high heat I don't need it to run 40 minutes, but I just want to run it for 5 minutes, make sure everything's heating, make sure it actually sounds good. So let's start it. That sounds pretty good. The idler will sound a little bit loud, and the rollers too, since we cleaned up those shafts. The rollers are used to riding in a groove, and now we kind of wrecked that groove. So it's going to basically cut a new groove where they're riding, and it will actually even get a little bit quieter than this. It's kind of loud because it's right against the wall, but yeah, if you hear rattling or something like that, it can be just a panel, something loose. So you can go around and kind of push on things and just see if something is not right. So, ooh, we got heat. All right. Okay, everybody. So that was it for that one. I know it's kind of a quick one, but if you have a Samsung or a Kenmore style Samsung, same thing. That is how you tear it all apart. deal with everything that basically moves besides the motor. We don't really ever have to deal much with that, but how to clean up those rollers, clean up the idler shaft, and change the idler if we need be. Check the belt and put it all back together. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.